We had been promised a really hot spell and had a few days off, so I headed north. I parked the car and headed over to the steep gravel path at the back of the National Trust Visitor Centre. It leads up to the monument viewpoint. It had just turned 10 o'clock and there was already a steady flow of tourists heading up. The viewpoint was originally created to give tourists a spectacular view of the monument, sitting at the head of a most attractive loch and framed by the many glorious rugged mountain peaks. But with the interest created by the use of the huge 21-arched viaduct by the Hollywood film industry, particularly due to its inclusion in the Harry Potter movies, it's now also a fine vantage point for film buffs. There was a train due from Mallaig, and sure enough it appeared through a gap in the trees. It was a diesel, but it was still entertaining to watch it make its way over the huge viaduct. The Glenfinnan viaduct was completed in 1901. It was built by Sir Bob McAlpine, Concrete Bob, using mass concrete, the first structure in the world to do so. The viaduct is over 100 feet in height and has 21 arches. I headed back down. The visitor centre is always worth a visit, even if it's just for something to eat. It is run by the National Trust for Scotland, as is the wonderful monument across the road. There's a signpost here that gives 2 or 3 options of interesting walks in the area. I decided to head along the forestry track for a while. Loch eventually reaches the sea by means of its river, where it's guarded by the 5-sided Clanranald stronghold of Castle Tioram. Bonnie Prince Charlie was rowed from that end of the loch for the raising of his standard here. The Highland chiefs had been notified of his arrival, and by the end of the day, more than 1,200 Highlanders had gathered here. He climbed a nearby hill, and his standard was raised to the sound of the bagpipes. The second Jacobite uprising was born. A new military road was built through the small hamlet of Glenfinnan in 1812, and 3 years later, a monument was erected by Alexander MacDonald of Glenaladale to commemorate the raising of the standard there, and the figure of an anonymous Highlander was added 20 years later. I headed up the steep brae to the attractive church, which adorns many of my panoramic shots of the head of the loch. To the left of the church we find the huge bell located in the adjacent green, and it's housed in enclosure beside a huge tree. It is the Church of St Mary and St Finnan and was designed by Edward Welby Pugin, the son of the designer of the House of Commons in London. This grand Gothic-style building stands in Glenaladale's grounds in a magnificent setting overlooking the head of Loch. I carried on until I saw the station sign and headed up the little side road. The station building now doubles as a museum. To step onto the platform is a step back in time. The old luggage trolley, the wonderful old adverts, a set of scales, a post box, there's even a broom. It just looks the same as it did when I used to pass through here in the 50s and 60s. From here a short path takes me to a tunnel under the railway line. The walk leads round on a steep winding path, and before we know it, it opens out in a wonderful grassy vantage point high above the loch. There's a wonderful view from here of the parts of Glenfinnan that we'd already covered in our previous walks. The path winds around the foothills of Uamh, the Heather Hill, and always giving breathtaking views of the glen below. The undulating hill path winds on through little clumps of conifers. Developed skin cancer in my right ear due to overexposure to the sun, so Van Gogh now has to wear a hat. Soon the huge impressive curved viaduct appeared in the valley below. It's a wonderful sight. There was a train due shortly from Fort William, so I picked out what I thought was the optimum spot for watching the train crossing the viaduct. At last the train arrived. It wasn't a steam train, but it was the next best thing. These big diesels are quite impressive. It slows down as it nears the viaduct. A wonderful sight. Construction of the Mallaig extension of the West Highland Railway was started in 1897, and the viaduct was in operation a year later. The line was to be built to support the fish trade. This 21-arch viaduct over the River Finnan is over 400 yards long, and over 100 feet high in places. When it was first proposed, not all opinion was favourable. Many thought the viaduct would detract from the scene here. That is certainly not the view now. The excitement was over and we all decided to head back down. On the way down, I headed over to a little grassy knoll for a look up Glenfinnan. The path then winds round and down through an arch in this wonderful viaduct. It's a wonderful walk. As we pass through the arch, we arrive in what appears as a bit of an amphitheatre. A wonderful atmospheric place. You feel as if you're in the set for the latest Harry Potter movie. And with that, I headed back to the car.